Chapter 1. Tessa's Sweet Life and a Heartfelt Plea. Tessa Harper stood in the small kitchen of Harper's Sweet Haven, her hands skillfully kneading dough as the warm air filled with the scent of vanilla and chocolate. The soft yellow light cast a gentle glow on her tousled brown hair, hastily tied up with a worn-out pink hairband. Outside the window, raindrops pattered against the quiet streets of Willow Creek, a peaceful town nestled in the Midwest, where everyone knew each other like one big family. The Bluetooth speaker on the shelf played her favorite country song, Sweet Home Alabama, drowning out the melancholic rain and wrapping her in the comforting embrace of home. She paused, wiping the sweat off her forehead with the back of her flour-dusted hand, and glanced at the pile of bills on the table. Rent for the shop, electricity, water. A financial burden she had been struggling to bear since opening her bakery. If a miracle doesn't happen soon, I might have to sell my beloved oven, Tessa muttered, a faint, weary smile flickering across her lips. She loved her little bakery, pouring her heart into creating treats as sweet as her dreams. Soft chocolate cupcakes, buttery crisp cookies, and fragrant loaves of bread that the people of Willow Creek adored. But sometimes, late at night when she was alone in the quiet kitchen, she wondered if it was worth clinging to this simple joy amidst all the hardships. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her out of her thoughts. The screen lit up with the name Clara Nguyen. Tessa frowned. Clara rarely called at this hour, usually opting for playful texts like, "Your baking sucks, but I still love you," or, "Bring me a cupcake, I'm feeling down." She answered, her voice as cheerful as ever. "Hey, bestie, what's up? Missing my voice? Or just craving free cake?" But there was no laughter on the other end, only muffled sobs so fragile that they sent a chill down Tessa's spine. "Tessa, I need your help. I don't know what to do." Tessa quickly turned off the speaker, silencing the country music and leaving only the sound of the rain and Clara's shaky breathing. She pulled out a chair and sat down, her voice shifting to a soothing yet serious tone, as if comforting a scared child. "What happened? Take a deep breath and tell me everything. Don't cry." Clara inhaled sharply, her voice trembling on the verge of breaking. "My family is forcing me to marry Evan Bradley this weekend. I don't love him, Tessa. I love Jake, but my dad owes the Bradley family a huge debt from a bad real estate investment. They said if I don't marry Evan, my dad will go to jail." Tessa rubbed her temple, her mind spinning as if she had just been thrown into a drama she had no intention of starring in. Evan Bradley, his name carried both respect and fear in Willow Creek. He was the wealthiest real estate mogul in town, owning countless properties and mansions, always appearing in tailored suits with that arrogant smile. She had seen him once when he stopped by her bakery to buy a box of cookies for his mother. She remembered the way he looked at her, not exactly with disdain, but with the kind of detached indifference that made her feel like a mere speck in the grand world he controlled. "What do you want me to do?" Tessa asked, keeping her voice light, as if trying to coax Clara out of her fear. "I'm not a superhero who can just swoop in and rescue you." Clara sobbed harder, her voice breaking like a dam bursting. "Crash the wedding for me. Please, Tessa. Pretend to be Evan's ex-lover or something. 'Cause a scene so I can run away with Jake. I can't spend my life with someone I don't love. You're the only one I trust, my sister." Clara's words were like a bittersweet arrow piercing through Tessa's heart, carrying both desperation and the deep, unshakable bond they had built since their high school days. Back when they sat on park benches, sharing a sandwich Tessa had secretly packed from home. Tessa bit her lip, her gaze drifting to the tray of cookies in the oven, turning golden brown and filling the air with a warm aroma. It reminded her of the times Clara sat in this very shop for hours, comforting her when the bakery was on the verge of closing due to financial struggles. She remembered Clara's radiant smile whenever she talked about Jake, the poor but passionate artist with eyes that sparkled like stars, the one who had once painted her portrait using homemade watercolors as a birthday gift. Tessa didn't need money. She didn't need promises. She just needed Clara's eyes to never lose their light, never be dimmed by sorrow. "All right," she sighed, a warm smile breaking through like sunshine after the rain. "I'll do it, because you're my sister, Clara. But fair warning, I'm a terrible actress, so don't laugh if I make a fool of myself." Clara let out a tearful laugh, her voice lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off her chest. Thank you, Tessa. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the best person in the world. The call ended with Clara's quiet sniffles, and within seconds, Tessa's phone lit up with a long text from her friend. Detailed information about Evan Bradley, from rumors of an alleged affair years ago with a girl from the Rusty Nail Bar, to his personal preferences, like drinking black coffee with no sugar and his obsession with vintage Mustangs. Tessa skimmed through it, murmuring under her breath, "Evan Bradley, you're about to get hit by a sweet storm." She stood up and grabbed a leftover cupcake from yesterday's batch, a small, delicate treat with a swirl of chocolate frosting she had made to reward herself after exhausting days. Tessa took a bite, closing her eyes to savor the sweetness melting on her tongue, feeling as if all her worries momentarily dissolved. Crashing a wedding for friendship, huh? This is going to be fun, she mused, a mischievous yet warm smile playing on her lips. Little did Tessa know that from that moment on, her life was about to embark on a journey filled with more drama, romance, and sweetness than any cake she had ever baked. A story even her baker's imagination couldn't have predicted. That evening, Tessa sat on her worn-out couch in her small apartment, a steaming mug of hot cocoa in her hands, her eyes scanning the scribbled notes of her hastily drafted wedding sabotage plan. She imagined herself bursting into Willow Creek's church, dramatically accusing Evan in front of hundreds of shocked guests, then watching Clara run away with Jake like a scene from one of the rom-coms they used to binge-watch on Netflix. "How do I make this convincing without getting thrown out immediately?" she muttered, underlining the words fake pregnancy, an idea Clara had jokingly suggested in her text. Tessa chuckled. The thought was so absurd it was almost hilarious. But for this friendship, she was willing to turn the ridiculous into reality. She stood up and walked over to her old wooden wardrobe in the corner of the room, rummaging through it until she found a bright red wig she had bought for a Halloween party 2 years ago. Slipping it on, she spun around in front of the small mirror hanging on the wall, bursting into laughter. "I look like I just stepped out of an 80s sitcom." The wig was a tangled mess, flaming red like fire, but she didn't care. As long as Evan didn't recognize her immediately, the plan would work. Tessa quickly texted Clara, "Get ready, I'm going all out. You and Jake just run, leave the rest to me." Clara responded with a heart emoji, and warmth spread through Tessa's chest. A deep, unwavering affection for the kind of friendship that nothing could break. That night, Tessa lay in bed, staring at the stained ceiling, thinking about Clara. They had once baked cookies together in Clara's kitchen, sharing silly teenage dreams. Clara had wanted to be a fashion designer so she could wear dresses of her own creation, while Tessa had only wished for a small bakery where she could make treats that brought people joy. Now Clara was trapped in a gilded cage, forced to sacrifice her happiness to save her father, while Tessa was ready to do anything to set her friend free. "You deserve to be happy, Clara," Tessa whispered, her voice as soft as a passing breeze, before closing her eyes and drifting into sleep. Her heart was filled with determination and love, like the frosting on their favorite cake, simple, sincere, and something neither of them could live without. Welcome to Soul Stories. Life can be overwhelming, but here we share heartfelt tales to bring you peace, joy, and inspiration. Your support, every comment, like, and follow means the world to us. It motivates us to create more meaningful and uplifting stories just for you. Did our latest story touch your heart? Leave a "I am happy" in the comments if you agree. Subscribe now and be part of a community that spreads love, kindness, and positivity. Let's make every day a little brighter together. Chapter 2, The Chaotic Wedding, Tessa Unleashed. On Saturday morning, the sky over Willow Creek was a rare, clear blue after days of rain, as if nature itself wanted to celebrate the town's grandest wedding. Tessa Harper stood before the mirror in her tiny apartment, adjusting the fiery red wig on her head and spinning around for a final check. The tangled, bright red strands made her burst into laughter. "I look like a crazy aunt from an 80s sitcom." She slipped into an old green dress she had bought from a thrift store, slightly tight at the waist but just roomy enough to hide the small balloon she had stuffed underneath to create a fake baby bump. Tessa patted her belly and whispered, "All right, little balloon, today you're the star of the show." She grabbed the fake wedding invitation Clara had expertly photoshopped and stuffed it into her tiny handbag. Taking a deep breath, she muttered, "For Clara, I can do this. As long as I don't trip and fall in front of the whole town, I'll be fine." A mischievous yet excited smile spread across her lips. Not from fear, but from the thrill of doing something absolutely insane, all to see her best friend happy. The grandest church in Willow Creek was fully prepared for the ceremony. A massive floral archway of white roses and carnations filled the air with the scent of spring, towering over rows of luxury cars in the parking lot, from sleek BMWs to a vintage Mustang that Evan Bradley would undoubtedly admire. Wedding vloggers bustled around, holding cameras and microphones, shouting, "Get a shot of the bride. This angle is perfect." Tessa slipped past the gates, her heart pounding as she handed the fake invitation to the usher. The security guard gave her a skeptical glance, his eyes lingering on her ridiculously red wig, but eventually nodded. "Go ahead." Tessa exhaled in relief, stepping inside, resisting the urge to fist pump in victory. Inside, the atmosphere was a blend of elegance and quiet anticipation. Over 300 guests filled the polished wooden pews, wealthy families, business associates of the Bradleys and Nguyens, and townspeople eager to witness the spectacle. White flower arrangements with red satin ribbons lined the aisle, while the sunlight streaming through stained glass windows cast shimmering patterns on the floor. Tessa chose a seat in the last row, closest to the exit, her best escape route. She sat down, clutching the balloon beneath her dress, feeling the ticklish sensation, but refusing to shift in case it gave her away. Through a gap in the crowd, she spotted Clara entering in a pristine white wedding gown. The delicate veil couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes. Clara looked like a dream, but Tessa knew her heart was breaking. At the altar, Evan Bradley stood tall, in an expensive gray suit, his slick-back black hair gleaming under the chandeliers, his signature arrogant smile aimed at the guests. "Handsome, sure. But let's see how long you last against this storm," Tessa thought. She didn't hate Evan. She didn't know him well enough to hate him. But if he dared to steal Clara's happiness, then he deserved a lesson, Tessa style. The priest, a kindly old man with snow-white hair, began the ceremony, his warm voice echoing through the church. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Clara Nguyen and Evan Bradley in the sacred bond of love and marriage." Tessa took a deep breath and shot up from her seat. "Stop! Evan can't get married." For one frozen second, the entire church went silent, as if time itself had stopped. Then chaos erupted. Gasps, whispers, and shocked murmurs filled the air as every eye turned toward Tessa. She strode down the aisle, clutching her fake baby bump, her cheeks burning from a mix of nerves and exhilaration. "Evan Bradley," she declared, pointing a trembling finger at him, her voice breaking as she forced herself to sound heartbroken. "You abandoned me when I got pregnant. You told me you loved me, and then you disappeared after one crazy night at Rusty Nail Bar." She dramatically wiped away non-existent tears, an acting trick she had learned from all the sappy romance movies she and Clara had watched together. The crowd collectively gasped. A few older women started whispering, "I knew that boy was trouble." So young, yet already a womanizer. Evan stormed down from the altar, his face turning an angry shade of red. "Who are you? I don't know you," he snapped. But Tessa didn't falter. "Oh, don't pretend, Evan," she cried, clutching her belly tighter. "Do you remember that vintage Mustang you drove that night? You told me I was the only one for you, and then you vanished, leaving me with this." She pressed a hand to her stomach for emphasis. The balloon almost slipped out, but she quickly held it in place, barely suppressing a giggle at Evan's utterly baffled expression. Through the chaos, Tessa caught a glimpse of her friend quietly inching toward the back exit, where Jake, dressed in his worn leather jacket, waited on his motorcycle, engine running. "Run, Clara," Tessa thought, relief washing over her as she saw the plan unfolding perfectly. But Evan wasn't about to let her off so easily. He stepped forward, his voice ice cold. "You think pulling a stunt like this means you can just walk away? I'll make sure you regret this." Tessa scoffed, turning to face him, her red wig slipping slightly to the side, but her confidence unwavering. "Good luck finding me, Evan Bradley. I'm the sweetest nightmare you'll ever have." With that, she spun around and bolted toward the front doors like a whirlwind, leaving behind a church in delightful chaos, just like the plot of every romantic comedy she had ever dreamed of. Evan's furious shout echoed behind her. "Stop her!" But the crowd was too disoriented. Some guests stood up, blocking the way, while others simply burst into laughter at the absurdity of the scene. Outside, Tessa spotted Clara jumping onto Jake's motorcycle, her wedding dress billowing behind her as they sped away. Tessa grinned, pulling off her wig as she ran, stuffing it into her purse. She ducked into a narrow alley near the church, her heart pounding, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "We did it, Clara," she whispered, giving herself an imaginary pat on the back. The sound of church bells still echoed in the distance, but to Tessa, it was the sound of victory, the triumph of friendship, of freedom, of a daring escape she had helped make possible for the person she loved like a sister. Meanwhile, back inside the church, Evan stood rigid, fists clenched, his expression dark with fury. He had no idea who that red-haired girl was, but he could feel the sting of humiliation as hundreds of eyes bore into him. Not with admiration, as he was used to, but with curiosity and amusement. "Who was she?" he growled at one of his attendants nearby. The man in a sharp black suit bowed slightly. "We'll find out, Mr. Bradley. She can't hide forever." Evan nodded, his cold gaze sharpening with determination. "Good. I want to know everything about her. She's going to pay for embarrassing me." As the chaos inside the church slowly settled, Evan returned to the altar, forcing himself to appear composed under the scrutiny of the wedding vlog cameras still rolling. But inside, a fire of vengeance burned. Tessa Harper, though he didn't yet know her name, hadn't just ruined his wedding. She had unknowingly set off a chain reaction that was about to turn his carefully built world upside down, in the sweetest, most maddening way possible. Tessa, once sure she wasn't being followed, plopped onto a bench in the alley, breathless but grinning from ear to ear. She pulled out her phone and quickly typed a message to Clara. "Congrats on escaping your golden cage. I might have overacted a little, but it worked, right?" Clara's reply came instantly. "You're a genius, Tessa. Jake and I are on the road now. I love you forever." Tessa laughed, tilting her face up to the sky as the last remnants of rain drizzled down on her cheeks. She had no idea that beyond this victory, another storm was brewing, one that bore the name Evan Bradley, and his revenge was about to be just as unexpected and sweet as the chaos she had unleashed. Chapter 3. Evan's Revenge, Tension, and the Struggle to Escape. Tessa Harper pulled down the rolling shutter of Harper's Sweet Haven, the metallic creak echoing through the quiet evening air. The dim glow of the street lights reflected off the rain puddles on the small streets of Willow Creek. She exhaled, letting her shoulders relax after a long day of baking, and chuckled as she replayed the chaos of Evan Bradley's wedding in her mind. "Clara must be happy with Jake by now," she murmured, picturing her best friend clutching the painter tightly as they rode off into the night on his beat-up motorcycle. She had no idea where Clara had escaped to, but she trusted they were safe, and that was all that mattered. Just as she turned to head home, a sleek black SUV silently rolled up in front of her, its headlights flashing ominously. Tessa frowned, her heartbeat quickening. Who drives something this fancy in Willow Creek at this hour? Before she could process the thought, 3 men in black stepped out of the vehicle, their faces stone cold. "Tessa Harper?" one of them asked, his deep voice devoid of emotion. Tessa instinctively took a step back, her fingers tightening around her keychain. Who are you? I don't know you." Before she could scream, a strong hand clamped over her mouth, and the world faded to black. When Tessa came to, she found herself lying on a stiff medical bed, the sharp scent of antiseptic stinging her nose. A harsh white light from the ceiling forced her to squint as she tried to move, only to realize her wrists and ankles were strapped down with thick leather restraints. "What the hell is going on?" she screamed, her voice shaking with panic. The steel door across the room swung open. Evan Bradley stepped inside, his expensive gray suit tailored perfectly to his tall frame, his piercing blue eyes as cold as ice. "Welcome to your little hell, Tessa Harper," he said, his voice dangerously low, his lips curling into a wicked smirk. Tessa glared at him, fury overtaking her fear. "You're insane. Let me go, you bastard." Evan stepped closer, leaning down until his face was mere inches from hers. You humiliated me in front of 300 people. You ruined my arrangement with Clara's family. Did you really think I'd let that slide? Tessa swallowed hard but kept her voice firm. I was just helping my friend. You have no right to kidnap me. Evan let out a dry chuckle, the sound echoing through the sterile room. Right? I have money, I have power, and now I have you. You thought faking a pregnancy at my wedding was funny? Well, let's make it real. He turned his head slightly, gesturing to a man who had just entered, a doctor in a white coat, his shifty eyes darting nervously. Tessa's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? She demanded, struggling against the restraints. Evan's gaze darkened. I paid for a little procedure, artificial insemination, using my DNA. Soon you will be pregnant, Tessa, and no one will believe you're innocent. Her breath caught in her throat. A sick wave of fear crashed over her. You're insane! I'll sue you! Evan cut her off, his voice razor sharp. Go ahead. I have the best lawyers money can buy. You? You're just a poor baker. The doctor stepped forward, holding a syringe filled with a clear liquid. Tessa screamed, thrashing wildly, but the restraints held her down. The sharp sting of the needle pierced her arm, and an icy sensation spread through her veins. Darkness swallowed her whole. When she woke up again, she was somewhere new. A small, rented house on the outskirts of Willow Creek. The windows were sealed shut. A guard stood outside the locked door. On the table beside her was a thick stack of papers, an agreement stating that she would carry and deliver the baby, then hand it over to Evan as his heir. In return, he wouldn't press charges against her for defamation. Tessa clutched her head, hot tears spilling over in anger and fear. What did I do to deserve this? But then she wiped her tears away, biting her lip hard. I'm not giving up. Clara escaped. I will too. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, searching for anything she could use. A meal had been delivered, chicken sandwich and orange juice, along with a flimsy plastic spoon. Tessa smirked, palming the spoon discreetly. Small, but useful. The days that followed were a relentless battle of wills between Tessa and Evan. He visited her often, and every encounter turned into a war of words. Evan was under immense pressure from his father, Mr. Bradley, a ruthless man who demanded that he restore the family's reputation after the disastrous wedding. You're not getting away, Tessa, Evan said one evening, leaning against the doorway, his hands tucked into his pockets. My father expects me to prove I have everything under control, including you. Tessa sat on the sofa, instinctively cradling her stomach even though she felt nothing yet. She glared at him. You think I'm afraid of you? I won't let you win so easily, Evan Bradley. You can lock me up, but you can't break my spirit. Evan clenched his jaw and stepped closer, his breath warm against her face. You're stubborn, but stubbornness won't help you escape. Tessa lifted her chin, her voice unwavering. Just wait and see. The tension between them was palpable, but deep down something strange began stirring inside Evan. He was furious at Tessa, hated the way she had wrecked his plans. But he couldn't deny it. Her defiance intrigued him. Every time she fought back, her eyes blazed like fire, and Evan found himself unable to look away. What the hell am I thinking? He scolded himself, turning away to hide his confusion. At night, she used the plastic spoon to pry at the window lock, waiting for the guards to change shifts when the wind would cover the sound. The old window was loose, but each attempt sent a jolt of fear through her. Then one day she spotted a guard carelessly leaving his phone on the table while bringing in her food. Heart pounding, Tessa snatched it up, her hands trembling as she quickly typed, Clara, I'm being held in a rented house outside town. Call the police. She barely pressed send before footsteps echoed down the hall. Evan shoved the door open, his sharp gaze scanning the room. What are you doing with that? He growled, snatching the phone from her hands. Tessa shot to her feet, defiant. I'm asking for help. You think I'll just sit here and let you ruin my life? Evan's face darkened as he read the message. You really think you can fight me? He threw the phone to the ground, shattering it. Tessa stared him down, her voice steady. I will never let you destroy me, Evan. Never. His fist clenched. his breath coming heavy. He wanted to yell at her, to threaten her further, but deep inside, a strange, frustrating helplessness settled over him. Tessa was unlike anyone he had ever faced. She didn't fear him, she didn't submit, and that infuriated him. Yet somewhere in the rage, a flicker of admiration stirred. Without another word, he stormed out, leaving Tessa standing there, heart pounding, but eyes burning with determination. One morning, Tessa felt dizzy as she stood up. She barely made it to the bathroom before nausea overtook her. A nurse hired by Evan arrived to check on her and handed her a pregnancy test. "You're pregnant," the nurse stated flatly. Tessa clutched her face, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, this can't be." But the two solid lines on the test left no room for doubt. Evan's insane revenge plan had worked. Evan arrived soon after, a new contract in his hands, his voice triumphant. "There's no denying it now. Sign this, Tessa. Have the baby, hand it over to me, and I'll leave you alone." Tessa looked at the papers, then up at him, her red-rimmed eyes filled with something far from weakness. Slowly, she stood, took the contract, and in front of Evan's eyes, she tore it to pieces. The shredded paper fluttered to the floor. "I'd rather die than give in to you, Evan Bradley. This baby is mine, not your pawn." Evan stood frozen, his face hardened, his lips parted as if to argue. But no words came out. Tessa turned away, walking back to the sofa, her heart aching but her resolve unshaken. Evan watched her, conflicted. Anger still simmered within him, but something else, something warm, was beginning to creep in. He left without another word, and Tessa knew she had won this battle. But she wasn't done. That night, Tessa peered through the narrow window slit, watching the guard dozing off. She pulled out the plastic spoon, hands trembling but steady. "I have to get out, not just for herself, but for Clara, and now for her child." The window lock gave a faint click. Tessa smirked. Freedom was closer than ever. Chapter 4. From Enemies to Lovers. Evan stood at a distance, watching as Tessa Harper balanced herself on the windowsill of the rented house on the outskirts of town. Her trembling hands clutched a worn-out plastic spoon, the same one she had spent countless nights using to pry open the lock. Outside, the rain drizzled softly, muffling the sound of her rapid breaths. A faint click echoed from the old rusty lock, making her heart race. The window, her final door to freedom, was finally opening. But as she pushed it harder, it barely budged. The frame was stuck, sealed by layers of chipped, weathered paint. "No! No, come on!" Tessa whispered in panic, peering through the small gap. She could see the guard dozing off under the porch roof, but the space wasn't big enough for her to squeeze through. Biting her lip, she pressed her sweaty palms against the damp wooden frame and shoved again. "I have to get out. I have to get back to Clara." Then suddenly, a sharp set of footsteps thundered behind her. "Where do you think you're going?" Evan Bradley's voice, low and filled with fury, cut through the air. Tessa spun around, eyes widening at the sight of him standing in the doorway, his white dress shirt slightly rumpled as if he had rushed over. "Let me go!" she yelled. But before she could jump, Evan lunged forward, yanking her away from the windowsill. She fought against his hold, pounding her fists against his chest. "Let me go, you bastard!" Evan wrapped his arms around her from behind, covering her mouth to muffle her screams. "Be quiet! You're going to wake the whole damn place up!" As they struggled, Tessa twisted hard in his grasp, and in that split second, whether out of frustration or impulse, Evan crashed his lips onto hers. The kiss was unexpected, heated, strong yet meltingly sweet like warm chocolate frosting. Tessa froze. Her breath hitched as she felt the heat of his lips against hers, the tension crackling between them like lightning in a summer storm. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to send her heart into complete disarray, like a still lake suddenly shattered by a skipping stone. Shoving him away, her face burning, she shrieked, "What the hell was that?" Evan stepped back, raking a hand through his messy hair, his own cheeks flushed. I don't know," he muttered. "You drive me insane, Tessa." Tessa pressed a hand to her lips, her voice laced with fury and confusion. "You kidnapped me, forced me into this nightmare, and now you kiss me? What is wrong with you?" Evan turned away, his voice quieter this time. I didn't mean to. I just, he exhaled. I don't want you to leave. Tessa's heart slammed against her ribs. She glared at him. You don't want me to leave? You locked me up. You forced this pregnancy on me. And now you say that? Evan didn't reply. Instead, he simply walked out, leaving Tessa standing there, breathless and furious, and completely shaken by the fact that she hadn't entirely hated that kiss. After that night, something about Evan shifted. He still came to see her every day, but the hostility in his eyes had softened. One morning, he knocked on her door, holding a steaming cup of black coffee and a small pastry box from Harper's Sweet Haven. Tessa raised an eyebrow, eyeing him with suspicion. What is this? Another attempt to bribe me? Evan set them on the table, his smirk faint but noticeably more real than before. It's not a bribe. I just figured you'd like black coffee. He hesitated before adding, and I got these from your bakery. They're actually good. Tessa glanced at the pastry box, recognizing the logo of her shop. She huffed, trying to mask her surprise. How do you even know I like black coffee? And don't act all friendly, I don't trust you. Evan leaned back against the chair across from her, casually stretching his arms. I guessed. You seem like the kind of person who likes things strong, like the way you crashed my wedding. Tessa smirked, unsure whether to be annoyed or amused. Well, thanks for the compliment, but I still hate you. Conversations between them began to flow, like melting frosting seeping into a dry cake, softening its rough edges. One evening, Tessa absent-mindedly shared a childhood memory, how she had baked her first birthday cake for her mother. It had been a disaster, burnt to a crisp, yet her mother had eaten every bite with a smile. Evan listened, his deep blue eyes reflecting curiosity. I never realized how much you love baking, he mused. Meanwhile, I don't know how to do anything except make money and keep my father happy. Tessa shrugged, her voice teasing. Well, you're rich. You don't need to bake. But don't expect me to feel sorry for you, kidnapper. To her surprise, Evan laughed, a genuine sound, free of arrogance. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. Tessa smirked. I take great pride in that. Evan studied her for a moment, something shifting in his gaze. I think I'm starting to see why. The tension between them eased slightly, though Tessa still kept her distance. She hadn't forgotten what he had done, kidnapping her, forcing this insane pregnancy upon her. But every day, Evan let slip glimpses of someone different. One evening, he admitted the truth. I never wanted to marry Clara, he confessed, absent-mindedly turning his now cold coffee cup in his hands. My father arranged it to secure more land. I only went along with it because I had no choice. Tessa studied him carefully, for the first time feeling a hint of sympathy. Then why didn't you just leave? You have money. Evan let out a bitter chuckle. Money doesn't buy freedom, Tessa. If I go against my father, he'll take everything away. She fell silent, unsure of how to respond. Evan wasn't entirely the villain she had painted him to be, but that didn't mean she could forgive him so easily. Evan began to care in ways he never had before. One cold evening, he noticed her shivering on the sofa. Without a word, he grabbed a blanket and draped it over her. Don't get sick, he muttered. It's not good for, you know. Tessa eyed him warily, knowing exactly what he meant. The baby. I don't need you to take care of me, she huffed, but then softer. But thanks. Evan smiled faintly, sitting beside her. Do you want anything to eat? I can bring you something. Tessa raised an eyebrow, testing him. Sugar-coated donuts. But don't think this means I forgive you. The next day he returned with a fresh box of warm donuts, their sugary scent filling the room. Tessa let out an amused scoff. You actually got them? Idiot. Evan shrugged. I don't want you to hate me more than you already do. Slowly, Tessa began to see a different side of Evan. Not the arrogant businessman, but the boy who once snuck out to go fishing at 10 years old. The boy who had dreamed of owning a small farm instead of following in his father's real estate empire. In return, she told him stories of her kitchen disasters, how she once burned down half her mother's stove, experimenting with a new recipe. She called me a walking disaster, but still ate the burnt cake, Tessa laughed. Evan's gaze softened. I bet it was still good. One night Tessa woke abruptly, her stomach twisting violently. She barely made it to the bathroom before nausea overtook her. Her skin turned pale as she clutched the sink for support. Hearing the commotion, Evan rushed in. Tessa, are you okay? He grabbed her by the shoulders, gently guiding her back to the sofa. Stay here. I'll get you some water. In his rush, he fumbled with the glass, spilling half of it before dashing back to refill it. Tessa, despite feeling like death, let out a weak chuckle. Since when are you this clumsy? Evan's ears turned red as he handed her the water. I'm not used to taking care of people. Just drink. Tessa took a small sip, then looked up at him. For a fleeting second, their eyes met. No hostility and no tension, just something quiet, something fragile. Evan sat down beside her, closer than usual, and before Tessa could react, he leaned in. This time when he kissed her, it wasn't out of frustration. It was gentle, tentative. A silent question, a soft confession wrapped in the warmth of a midnight rain. Tessa's heart pounded. This kiss was different. She didn't push him away. Heat spread from her lips to her fingertips, curling deep inside her chest. When Evan pulled back, his voice was barely above a whisper. I like you, Tessa. I know you hate me, but I can't pretend anymore. Tessa's breath was shaky as she pressed her fingers to her lips. Why do you do this to me? You kidnapped me, forced me into this mess, and now you're saying you like me? Evan let out a quiet, almost self-deprecating laugh. I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But let me make it right. Tessa searched his face, looking for deception. But for the first time, all she saw was sincerity. A man stripped of arrogance, stripped of control, just someone who was real. That night, Evan made a choice. I love you, Tessa, he admitted. I'll let you go. No contracts, no conditions. Just give me a chance. Tessa hesitated, torn between her past hatred and the feelings she could no longer ignore. She thought of Clara, of her bakery, of the life she had fought so hard to reclaim. And yet she couldn't deny that something had changed. I don't know if I can trust you, she murmured, but I'll try. Just don't make me regret it, Evan. Evan exhaled, his chest rising with relief, his blue eyes shining with a hope he hadn't felt in years. I won't. And for the first time, Tessa smiled, small, hesitant, but warm, like melted sugar, like the first bite of a soft golden cake. A sign that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Chapter 5, Freedom and Redemption. For the first time in weeks, Tessa Harper stood in front of Harper's Sweet Haven, clutching a bouquet of white carnations, the same ones Evan had handed her when he finally let her go. That morning, he had arrived at the rented house and declared, no contracts, no conditions. You're free to go. Tessa had still been skeptical, her voice sharp as she replied, don't think I'll trust you that easily. But when Evan nodded, his eyes bright with something that looked like hope, and opened the door for her to step out, she felt it. The cool rush of air against her skin. Freedom, finally. Back at the bakery, she turned on the speaker, letting Sweet Home Alabama fill the air. She took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of flour and sugar. I'm home. The bell above the door jingled. Tessa looked up. And there was Evan standing in the doorway, holding a cup of black coffee and a large paper bag. She crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. What now? Here to kidnap me again? Evan chuckled, setting the items on the counter. Nope, coffee for you and this. He pulled a takeout container from the bag, grilled chicken salad with walnuts, a fresh bottle of orange juice, and a printed appointment card from the local clinic. I read online that these are good for pregnant women, and I think we should check on the baby. Tessa blinked, caught off guard by his sudden thoughtfulness. You're serious? Since when do you care? Evan rubbed the back of his neck, looking oddly bashful. I messed this up. I need to take responsibility. Will you come with me? Tessa hesitated. She still didn't want to be near him, but the thought of the tiny life growing inside her made her exhale and nod. Fine, but if you say anything stupid in there, I swear. Evan smirked. I promise I'll behave. At the clinic, Tessa lay on the examination table, the ultrasound probe cool against her skin. Evan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, but his eyes were locked on the screen. Then a flickering image appeared. A tiny heartbeat, rhythmic and steady, like a soft drum beat. Tessa's lips parted, her eyes welling up. "It's real." Evan's voice was quiet. "It's healthy, right?" The doctor nodded. "Very healthy, about 8 weeks along." Evan leaned in for a closer look, and for the briefest moment, his hand brushed against hers on the bedrail. A light, warm touch that made Tessa's breath hitch, but she didn't pull away. On the drive back, Evan was uncharacteristically silent. At a red light, he finally spoke. "You okay? I saw you crying." Tessa wiped her eyes, her voice teasing to mask her emotions. "I was crying for the baby, not for you. Don't get cocky." Evan chuckled. "I know, but I'm glad you don't hate it." Tessa turned to the window, her mind tangled. She should hate Evan for everything he'd done. But in that clinic, the worry in his eyes hadn't seemed fake. Am I crazy for thinking he's not as awful as I thought? Weeks passed. One afternoon, as Tessa kneaded dough, she felt a small kick. Her hands froze. "Oh my God," she whispered, pressing her palm to her belly. Evan, who had been dusting the counter, something he had voluntarily started doing as part of his redemption arc, turned around. "What is it?" Tessa hesitated, then admitted, "It kicked." Evan's face lit up. "Really? Can I hear it?" Tessa sighed but nodded. Evan knelt, pressing his ear to her stomach, steadying himself by resting his hand lightly over hers. Another kick. His eyes widened, his grin stretching across his face. "I felt that. It's strong." Tessa watched him, his childlike excitement, the way his blue eyes sparkled. And against her will, her heart stuttered. She quickly pulled her hand away, smirking. "Don't get ahead of yourself. You're not its dad." Evan straightened, his voice softer. "I know, but I want to be a part of its life, if you'll let me." Tessa turned back to her dough, feigning focus. But for the first time, she didn't see Evan as an enemy. She saw a man trying, awkwardly, stubbornly, but genuinely. Evan's redemption arc came with small gestures. One evening, he showed up with a steaming container. "Chicken soup with chia seeds," he said, setting it down. "Apparently it's good for moms and babies." Tessa took a spoonful, nodded in approval. "Not bad, but don't think this means I forgive you." Evan smirked. "I know. I'll keep trying." Another time, when she grew tired from standing too long, Evan guided her to a chair. His hand lingered on hers a little too long. Tessa flushed. "Did you just do that on purpose?" Evan winked. "Maybe. You're cute when you're grumpy." She swatted his hand away, but she wasn't really mad. His touch was warm, like the coffee he brought her every morning without fail. One afternoon, as she stirred frosting in the kitchen, Evan stood behind her, watching. "Try adding more vanilla," he suggested. He leaned in. Too close, his breath warm against her ear. And before she could react, he placed a light kiss on her cheek. Tessa spun around, eyes wide. "What the hell was that?" Evan grinned, his voice playful yet gentle. "I couldn't help it. You look adorable when you bake." Tessa shoved him away, cheeks burning. "Mess up my frosting, and I swear I'll kick you out." But she wasn't mad, because that kiss, it had been sweet, like powdered sugar dissolving on her tongue, and it left her more flustered than she wanted to admit. Evan continued to surprise her. One evening, he handed her a small, handcrafted lantern. "I read that you like lanterns. It's not perfect, but—" Tessa examined it, slightly lopsided, clearly homemade. "It looks like a preschool project," she teased, "but I like it." Another time, he stood outside the bakery, holding a bag of walnuts. "They're good for you. Eat before you get hungry." Tessa nibbled on one, eyeing him. "Are you trying to turn me into a squirrel?" Evan laughed. "Squirrels are cute, like you." That night, as he stood by the bakery door, his hand brushed against hers while handing her another bag of food. "Tessa," he murmured, "I love you. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you, if you let me." Tessa hesitated. Between hatred and something softer, something dangerously close to affection. The baby's small kick, the accidental touches, the stolen kiss. All of it was melting into something sweet and undeniable. She sighed, then smirked. I haven't forgiven you, but, she met his gaze, try winning me over. Let's see how long you last. Evan's grin was instant. Challenge accepted. I'll make you laugh every day, Tessa Harper. She turned away, pretending to be busy, but her lips curled into a smile. She didn't know if she could love Evan, but for the first time, she wanted to give them a chance. Chapter 6. A Sweet Ending. The Dream Wedding. Tessa Harper stood in the small kitchen of Harper's Sweet Haven, kneading cupcake batter as the soft yellow light bathed her face, now rounder from nearly 9 months of pregnancy. The scent of vanilla and chocolate filled the air, mingling with Sweet Home Alabama playing from the Bluetooth speaker on the shelf. It had been months since Evan had set her free, making amends through nourishing meals, lingering touches, and soft kisses that sent her heart into chaos, no matter how much she tried to deny it. She no longer called him her kidnapper. Now he was just an idiot. But the way she said it was no longer filled with anger, but with something else. Something warm. The doorbell chimed, and Evan walked in, dressed in a simple light blue shirt, carrying a steaming jar of his usual homemade chicken soup with chia seeds. Tessa paused, placing her hands on her hips. This again? Are you trying to turn me into a boiled chicken? I'm already huge, you know. Evan laughed, setting the jar on the counter, his deep blue eyes filled with tenderness. Not at all. Whether you're a boiled chicken or not, you're still beautiful. But that's not why I'm here. My family wants to meet you tonight. Tessa frowned, wiping her hands on her apron. Meet me? For what? To scold me for ruining your wedding? Evan stepped closer, reaching for her hand. His fingers brushed against her belly as he leaned down. No, Tessa. I told them everything. About us. About the baby. I want them to know that I love you. I want to make this official, so they'll accept you as part of the family. Tessa blinked, her heartbeat quickening. And what exactly did you tell them? That I was some wedding-wrecking maniac who ended up pregnant because of your revenge scheme? Evan chuckled, shaking his head. I told them I was wrong for what I did to you, but I don't regret it, because now I have you and our child. I want to make things right, the way I should have from the start. Tessa pulled her hand back, torn between doubt and the undeniable warmth rising in her chest. I'm not ready to forgive you completely, Evan, and your family will hate me. I'm just a baker, and you, well, you're the son of a real estate tycoon. Evan held her hand again, this time firmer. They won't hate you, and I'll protect you. Let me prove it. Tessa searched his eyes, saw the sincerity, and for the first time, a flicker of rare nervousness in him. She sighed. Fine, but if they throw me out, you're driving me home. That evening, Tessa arrived at the Bradley estate on the outskirts of Willow Creek, wrapped in a loose sweater that concealed her baby bump. She clutched a bouquet of white carnations Evan had given her, a silent talisman against her nerves. Her hands shook as she stepped through the grand wooden doors. Inside, Mr. Bradley, tall and imposing in a black suit, studied her with a cold, calculating gaze. So you're the one who ruined my son's wedding? Tessa swallowed, bracing for the worst. But before she could answer, Evan stepped forward, his grip tightening around hers. Dad, she's not a homewrecker. She's the woman I love and the mother of my son. I want you and Mom to accept her. Silence stretched. Then, Mrs. Margaret Bradley, an elegant woman with silver hair neatly pinned up, unexpectedly smiled. Evan told me everything. He also said you're an exceptional baker. She glanced at her son. He's never spoken about anyone the way he speaks about you. If he loves you and is willing to take responsibility, I won't object. She paused, then added with a teasing glint. But tell me, do you really bake as well as he claims? Tessa blinked, then let out a laugh, her tension melting. Oh, definitely. I'll bring you some to judge for yourself, if you don't mind eating pastries from a wedding wrecker. Mrs. Bradley laughed, clearly amused. I like you. Mr. Bradley huffed, his voice still stern. If my son has chosen you, I won't argue, but don't bring disgrace to this family. Tessa nodded, exhaling in relief. She glanced at Evan Dash, who had not only redeemed himself, but had just stood up for her against his powerful family. A few weeks later, Early in the morning, Tessa was baking when a sharp pain seized her stomach. She gasped, gripping the counter. Then another wave of pain. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Evan, I think it's time. Evan, 15 minutes away at his office, dropped everything. He sped through traffic, nearly running a red light, and burst into the bakery, completely panicked. Are you okay? Hold on to me. I don't know how to deliver a baby. Tessa, sweating through the contractions, managed a weak laugh. Just drive, idiot. I'm the one giving birth here. At the hospital, hours passed in grueling labor. Sweat drenched Tessa's hair as she clutched Evan's hand. So tightly he winced. You're stronger than I thought, he groaned. Tessa shot him a glare. Shut up! It hurts! Then, a sharp cry filled the air. A healthy baby boy, weighing 3.2 kilograms, entered the world. Tessa's breath hitched as she cradled him in her arms, tears spilling down her cheeks. Eli. His name is Eli. Evan stood beside her, his eyes red-rimmed, voice hushed with awe. He's beautiful. Gently, he brushed a damp strand of hair from her face. Then he whispered, Thank you, Tessa. I love you both. Tessa, exhausted yet overwhelmed with happiness, met his gaze. You are an idiot, but... She swallowed, her heart full. I love you too. For the first time, she admitted the one thing she had been denying all along. Evan exhaled, a slow smile breaking across his face, and as baby Eli let out another tiny cry, Evan leaned down, kissing her softly. It tasted like sugar, like warm bread fresh out of the oven. Sweet, comforting, and filled with promise. A new beginning. Their beginning. Chapter 7. A sweet ending. The dream wedding. Time passed, and Evan continued his relentless pursuit of Tessa with unwavering sincerity. He showed up at the bakery every day, bringing soup, fresh juice, and spending hours playing with Eli, who was now 3 months old and loved giggling whenever Evan lifted him onto his shoulders. One afternoon, Tessa was decorating cupcakes while Eli napped in his crib nearby. Evan walked in, a playful glint in his eye, hands hidden behind his back. Tessa narrowed her eyes. What now? Don't tell me you brought more soup. Evan suddenly dropped to one knee, revealing a small silver ring, engraved with T and E. Tessa Harper, I love you. I was wrong to take you the way I did, but I want to spend the rest of my life making it right, with you and Eli. Marry me? Tessa froze. The piping bag of buttercream slipped from her fingers, splattering frosting onto the floor, onto her apron. She stared at Evan, at his deep blue eyes shimmering with hope, and felt her heart, once hardened against him, melt like butter under the summer sun. You sure about this? I'm not exactly easy to live with. I yell a lot, she teased, her voice shaky. Evan laughed. I'm sure. I want you to yell at me every day, future Mrs. Bradley. Tessa swallowed, tears welling up. All right then, idiot. Evan slid the ring onto her finger before standing and pulling her into a tight embrace, whispering against her ear. I'll make you happy, I swear. Tessa hugged him back, feeling the warmth of his promise, solid and real. Their wedding took place at Harper's Sweet Haven, simple, intimate, yet filled with warmth like a family gathering. Tessa baked her own wedding cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece covered in white frosting, adorned with edible carnations. The rich scent of vanilla filled the bakery, blending with the aroma of fresh coffee from the newly opened corner cafe. Only close friends and family attended. Clara and Jake, now free to love openly after Evan had wiped Clara's family's debts by buying out her father's loans. Mr. and Mrs. Bradley, Tessa's mother, and a few cherished neighbors from Willow Creek. Before the ceremony, Clara, her maid of honor, pulled her into a tight hug, eyes glistening. You found happiness, Tessa. I'm so glad. I thought you'd hate him forever. Tessa chuckled, squeezing her best friend's hands. Well, you did drag me into this crazy drama. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have Eli, or that fool over there. Jake, Evan's best man, nudged him with a smirk. Not bad, man. From enemy to husband? What's your secret? Evan laughed, clapping Jake's shoulder. I have you to thank for stealing Clara. If you hadn't, I wouldn't have stood a chance. Tessa wore a simple white dress, no veil, stepping out of the kitchen with Eli in her arms. Her baby boy was dressed like a tiny prince, cooing happily as she handed him to her mother before walking toward Evan. He stood waiting, dressed in a pale blue suit, his eyes lighting up the moment he saw her. "You look beautiful, Tessa." Under the soft golden glow of string lights draped across the bakery, she joined him at the altar, where an old family friend, now a priest, began the vows. "Evan Bradley, do you promise to love and cherish Tessa Harper for all your days?" Evan's voice was steady. "I do, forever." The priest turned to her. "And Tessa Harper, do you promise to—" "I do," she interrupted, smirking, "though he is an idiot and drives me crazy." Laughter rippled through the guests, and as the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Evan leaned down and kissed her. A deep, lingering kiss that tasted of vanilla and cake, filled with the warmth of the love they had built from the wreckage of their past. Tessa wrapped her arms around him, feeling his breath against hers, hearing the sound of applause surrounding them. Clara hollered, "Kiss her again!" Tessa's face flushed. "Don't listen to her. That's enough," she muttered, shoving Evan lightly. But he smirked, pulling her back in to place a soft kiss on her forehead. "I can't help it, Mrs. Bradley." Laughter and joy filled the air as their friends and family celebrated around them. After the ceremony, everyone gathered around the wedding cake. Eli lay in his crib beside Tessa, giggling as Evan playfully fed him a tiny spoonful of frosting. Mrs. Bradley took a bite of cake, nodding in approval. "This is delicious. My daughter-in-law is quite the talent. Evan, you made the right choice." Mr. Bradley, ever the stern businessman, simply huffed, but finished his slice without complaint, the corners of his lips twitching into something dangerously close to a smile. Tessa turned to Evan, now her husband, and whispered, "Well done, former enemy turned lover." Under the table, Evan squeezed her hand. "I can do better than that. For the rest of our lives, you'll see." After the wedding, Evan pursued his childhood dream, investing in a small farm on the outskirts of Willow Creek, just an hour's drive from Tessa's bakery. He walked away from the pressures of his father's real estate empire, using his savings to buy a lush, green piece of land. He built a chicken coop, planted organic vegetables, and even raised a few dairy cows. "I just want a simple life, with you and Eli," he told Tessa one evening as they sat on the farmhouse porch, watching the sunset bathe the fields in gold and crimson. Tessa leaned against his shoulder, sipping the coffee he had made. "If you're calling this simple, then I must be a princess," she teased. "But I like it. No drama, just us." Meanwhile, Tessa continued her passion for baking. She expanded Harper's Sweet Haven, adding a cozy corner for coffee and fresh juices, an idea Evan had suggested back when he was taking care of her during pregnancy. Her menu grew, featuring new creations like walnut cupcakes made with milk from Evan's farm, buttery vanilla cookies, and crispy cheese toast that had customers swooning. The bakery became a beloved spot in town, not just for the pastries, but for the sweet love story of its owner. Evan often stopped by, carrying Eli on his shoulders. He would grin and say, "Your baking is better than my chicken farming." "I'm officially jealous." Tessa would roll her eyes affectionately. "Don't be jealous, dear husband. You're not bad at raising chickens." Their life settled into a peaceful rhythm, filled with laughter and warmth. Evan learned how to milk the cows, though he occasionally spilled buckets of milk all over the barn, sending Tessa into fits of laughter. "You're such a lovable idiot," she would say, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. Tessa, in turn, brought Eli to the farm, hoping to teach him how to pick vegetables. Instead, the little boy preferred digging in the dirt and chasing chickens. "He's just like you," she complained to Evan, but her voice was always filled with love as she watched father and son play together, a new addition to the family. 3 years later, on a bright spring morning, Tessa was baking when she felt a familiar movement in her belly. She placed a hand over it, smiling. "Another little warrior, huh?" She called Evan at the farm, her voice shaking slightly. "Evan, I think it's time." Evan dropped everything, jumped into his truck, and sped home in record time, sweating as he helped her into the car. "This time I'm calmer. Don't worry," he insisted. Tessa, between contractions, managed a laugh. "If you're calm, then pigs must be flying." At the hospital, after hours of labor, a beautiful baby girl was born. A tiny princess, 3 kilograms with Evan's deep blue eyes and Tessa's radiant smile. Tessa cradled her close, tears slipping down her cheeks. Lily! Her name is Lily, our little princess. Evan leaned down, kissing her forehead, then the baby's soft, delicate head. Thank you, Tessa. Our family is perfect now. His arms wrapped around them both, his voice thick with emotion. I love all 3 of you so much. Tessa rested against him, exhausted but blissful. I love you too, my lovable idiot. A life of sweet moments. Their little family thrived between the farm and the bakery. Eli grew into a lively, energetic boy, running through the fields, helping Tessa bake, even though he usually ended up covered in flour. Lily, now 3 years old, had soft curls and loved riding on Evan's shoulders while he tended to the chickens, giggling every time he made silly clucking sounds. Tessa expanded her bakery again, launching a new line called Bradley Farm Specials. Using fresh milk and organic eggs from Evan's farm, the townspeople loved it, forever and always. One warm summer night, after putting Eli and Lily to sleep in their cribs on the farmhouse porch, Tessa and Evan sat together on the wooden swing, the lantern he had once made glowing softly in the night. Evan pulled her into his arms, his fingers entwining with hers. Thank you for giving me a family, Mrs. Bradley, he murmured. I never imagined I'd have this. Tessa leaned against him, smiling. Thank you for never giving up, Mr. Bradley. From enemy to lover, and now the father of my children. You've done well. Evan chuckled before tilting her chin up for a slow, tender kiss. It tasted of vanilla and fresh farm milk. Sweet, warm, and forever theirs. Tessa wrapped her arms around him, whispering, I love you. Always. Evan kissed her again, his voice deep and steady. I love you too. Always. And so their love story, born from chaos, revenge, and an unexpected bond, found its perfect ending, wrapped in the scent of fresh-baked pastries and the warmth of their farm, where 2 once clashing hearts now beat as one. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.